The medical wing of the Helion Refuge Station always hummed with a soft, pulsing glow. Half bioluminescent architecture, half malfunctioning lighting panel that no one had bothered to fix. Elias Ward wiped the condensation off his forehead as he stepped out of the sterilization chamber, exhausted from 12 straight hours of triage rotations. He wanted nothing more than to collapse onto his bunk, bury himself under synthetic blankets, and forget that the galaxy was burning outside these walls. He didn't make it that far. A figure stood in the dim corridor, still, poised, almost sculptural in the bluish glow. A woman, tall, silver-veined skin catching the light like starlight pressed beneath glass. Her hair, a cascade of dark teal, fell in soft, luminescent waves, and her eyes, violet, unfathomably deep, watching him with a calm intensity he wasn't prepared for at this hour. She bowed slightly. A motion too formal, too controlled, too deliberate to belong to a refugee. "I am Arinya Sael," she said softly. "First daughter of the Arakai Continuum. I request Dawn Guard Sanctuary." Elias blinked. "I'm sorry, what kind of sanctuary?" Her voice stayed steady, but her hands, elegant, clawless, trembling in the faintest way, told a different story. "The Dawn Protocol," she clarified. "A bond of protection invoked only when one is hunted. I must remain beside you until the first artificial sunrise. If you grant it, I will be safe. If you deny it, I will not live to see morning." Elias stared at her, at the exhaustion behind her perfect posture, at the fear she tried so hard to bury, at the dignity she held like armor. "I think," he said slowly, "you might have the wrong person. I'm just a human medical tech. I run scans. I fix IV lines. I am absolutely not a sanctuary-type guy." She stepped closer, and he heard it then. The faint hiss of distant alarm klaxons, the muffled echoes of boots somewhere deep in the station's bowels. "They know I am here," she whispered, "and they are coming." A chill crept over Elias' spine. "Look, whatever this is, whoever is after you, shouldn't you be asking security, or command, or literally anyone with authority?" Her voice softened, barely above a breath. "Because only a neutral species can keep the Dawn Protocol valid, only a human, and you were the one the fates placed in my path." That last part shouldn't have hit him as hard as it did, but something in the quiet certainty of her tone made his chest tighten. She knelt, actually knelt right there on the steel floor, lowering her luminous head before his boots. "Elias Ward," she said, "if you deny me, they will take me before dawn. If you accept, I am safe at your side, by law, by oath, by witness." He swallowed hard. "Okay, please don't kneel, really not necessary, standing works." "Standing is great." She looked up, hope flickering like light through water. "Then you accept." He had no idea what the hell was happening. He was exhausted. He was definitely not qualified. He was absolutely going to regret this. "Yes," he said, "I accept." Arinya inhaled sharply, a sound halfway between relief and awe. A soft pulse of violet light shimmered across her markings, and then the station lights flickered. A tone he'd never heard chimed from the corridor wall. A string of legal text scrolled across the hollow display in 3 languages. Dawn Protocol initiated. Witness bond pending. Biosignature synchronization active. Elias stared at the screen. What does witness bond mean? Arinya's cheeks flushed a luminous rose. "It means," she said carefully, "that by granting sanctuary, you have initiated the first stage of an Arakai matrimonial accord." Elias froze. "Wait, matrimonial. Only if dawn is reached with our proximity unbroken," she added hastily. "This is merely preliminary." "Preliminary marriage," Elias whisper yelled. A distant explosion shook the corridor, light dust drifting from the ceiling. Arinya stood in one graceful motion, her voice suddenly sharp with urgency. "They've breached the lower decks. Elias, we must move." The corridor lights dimmed again. The emergency indicators pulsed in red waves. Footsteps echoed somewhere beyond the bend. Arinya stepped close, too close, her warmth brushing his arm, her violet eyes bright with something fierce. "Stay with me," she whispered. "If we separate, the protocol collapses." He exhaled shakily. "Oh, fantastic, so now it's a marriage speedrun." Arinya didn't smile, but her eyes. They sprinted down the narrow corridor, Elias half-dragged by Arinya's impossible grace. She moved with a kind of fluid precision that made even running look ceremonial, silent, controlled, almost weightless. Elias, meanwhile, was making every sound a human body could make. Shoes slapping metal, lungs begging for retirement, heart crashing against his ribs like it was trying to escape. Behind them, distant boots hammered closer. "Who exactly is chasing you?" Elias gasped. War brokers, Arinya replied without turning. Private contractors hired by factions who thrive on instability. Right, Elias wheezed. Of course, interstellar bounty hunters, why not? Arinya pulled him into a side passage, pressing her back against the wall as the sound of armored boots thundered past the main hall. She lifted a finger to her lips, an unmistakable request for silence. Elias nodded, crouched beside her, and tried not to collapse. The quiet lasted all of 5 seconds. A chime pulsed from the corridor panel beside them. Both of them froze. Another string of text scrolled across the small, illuminated display. Proximity VRIFID. Biosignature coupling at 32%. Witness bond progression, active. Elias exhaled through his teeth. So it's what, keeping score? Arinya's eyes flicked to the display, her expression tightening. It is verifying compatibility. Compatibility for what? For the bond, it measures alignment, physical, emotional, neural. And if Dawn arrives while we are still in proximity, then we're married, Elias groaned. Amazing, perfect, love that for us. Arinya tilted her head slightly, her violet eyes reflecting the emergency lights. For the record, she said in her soft, even voice, Arakai marriage is not trivial. Neither is human marriage, Elias whispered. In fact, we tend to treat it as something you don't stumble into while running from mercenaries. Her expression softened just a little. I understand, and I apologize, I did not intend to. A burst of energy fire crackled at the far end of the corridor. Arinya grabbed Elias' wrist. No more hiding. They ran again, but this time she veered into a cargo lift alcove. The doors slid shut, cutting off the sound of weapons fire. The lift hummed downward, deeper into the station. Elias leaned against the wall, chest heaving. Arinya stood perfectly still, hands folded, eyes forward, like nothing about this situation was remotely out of the ordinary. He couldn't stop staring at her. Okay, he said finally. Explain it, all of it. What is the Dawn Protocol? Why me, why now? Arinya's chest rose slowly with her breath. The Dawn Protocol is invoked only when one is marked for elimination, she began quietly. It binds the seeker to a neutral species and grants legal protection until sunrise. If sunrise is reached, the bond becomes recognized under both Arakai and neutral law. And with that recognition comes authority over high-level access routes, diplomatic channels, and emergency evacuation systems. Evacuation systems, Elias repeated. Yes. Millions of refugees across the border systems depend on those routes, and someone is trying to control them. She met his gaze then, really met it, and Elias finally understood the fear beneath her composure. Someone killed the Continuum Council, Arinya continued. My family, my mentors, my entire lineage, and I am the last surviving keyholder. Elias felt the bottom drop out of his stomach. And they want the keys, he said. They want to prevent their use, Arinya corrected. To keep refugees trapped in contested zones, so the crisis continues, so the war economy thrives. The lift slowed. Arinya stepped closer, not urgently but intentionally. I chose you, she said softly, because humans are recognized as neutral, because the protocol requires a witness of compassion, someone who offers sanctuary freely. Elias blinked. You're saying if I'd said no, I would have died in the corridor. The lift doors slid open into dim industrial lighting. Elias swallowed hard. Okay, he said quietly. Then I'm glad I said yes. Arinya's expression shifted, just barely. Something tender flickered behind her eyes. You acted with instinctive kindness. That speaks more than you realize. Before Elias could respond, a sudden metallic crash echoed through the loading bay. Arinya turned sharply, raising her hand, and to Elias' shock, a thin ripple of shimmering energy flickered around her palm like a forming blade. He blinked. Wait, you have powers. She didn't answer. Instead, she stepped in front of him, her posture shifting into something lethal and elegant. 3 armored mercenaries burst from behind the storage crates, weapons raised. Elias ducked instinctively. Arinya moved, fast. Too fast for his eyes to follow. A single sweep of her arm sent a violet arc slicing through the air, an energy ribbon cutting the first mercenary's weapon clean in half. A spinning kick disarmed the second. The third fired a kinetic round directly at her, and the bullet dissolved into harmless sparks against her shimmering forearm. Elias stared, speechless. Arinya exhaled, shimmering blade fading from her hand. She turned back to him, serene as moonlight. We must keep moving. Elias scrambled to his feet. Yep, great, moving is good, moving sounds fantastic. As they crossed the loading bay, the corridor lights shifted again, this time to a soft amber glow. More text scrolled across a nearby panel. Biosignature alignment, 47%. Mutual proximity, VRFID. Dawn protocol, irreversible. Elias froze. Irreversible, he whispered. Arinya stepped beside him, her voice gentle. It means the protocol cannot be cancelled. The only outcome now is completion. When the sun rises, Elias murmured. When the sun rises, she echoed. Another distant explosion shook the bay. Arinya's hand brushed his arm, accidentally or intentionally, he couldn't tell, and the touch sent a quiet warmth spreading through him, grounding, steadying. Elias, she said softly, if we reach sunrise together, you will inherit the responsibility I carry. You will become part of this fight, of my people's legacy. He breathed out. I wasn't planning on becoming anyone important today. Arinya smiled. The lower decks of Helion Refuge Station were a maze of forgotten storage tunnels, abandoned maintenance shafts, and dim auxiliary corridors that hadn't seen proper lighting in years. Elias knew them well, too well, honestly. Most of his early shifts had been spent fixing ancient pipes, patching broken bulkheads, and crawling through air ducts built long before safety regulations were a thing. He had never imagined sprinting through them with a glowing alien heiress whose hand fit too perfectly against his. But here they were. Arinya halted at a junction where 3 corridors branched off into darkness. She lowered her head slightly, listening. Elias heard only the hum of distant machinery, the heartbeat of a station that housed nearly 70,000 refugees. Then footsteps, far behind them, too many to count. They're sweeping the lower ring, Elias whispered. Yes, they are methodical. They will not stop until they find me. Her voice was calm, but there was something raw beneath it, something that hadn't been there earlier. Fear was what made her voice tremble. It was grief. Elias stepped closer. Arinya, who exactly did you lose when you said your family? She didn't speak immediately. She raised a hand instead and touched the corridor wall. Tiny veins of blue light flared outward, following the pattern of her fingers as if the station itself were responding to her. When an Arakai keyholder dies, she said quietly, their light fades from the network. I felt them all go dark, one by one. Elias' breath caught, all of them. My mother, my brother, 12 council elders, my mentor, my entire lineage. The glow under her hand flickered. Her composure cracked, barely, but enough that Elias saw something he hadn't seen before, not just fear, not just duty, but loneliness so profound it hollowed the air around her. He stepped closer without thinking. I'm sorry, he said softly. Arinya closed her eyes. Even now, the Dawn Protocol is meant to be witnessed by family, but there is no one left to witness me, no one left to protect what we built, except... Her words faltered. She opened her eyes, except you. Elias swallowed hard. I'm trying, really. I know I'm just a human med tech who panics when coffee machines break, but... She surprised him with a small, warm laugh. You underestimate yourself. Constantly, he said. I find it endearing. His heart made a very concerning jump. Before he could respond, a sudden static burst cracked through the ceiling speakers. Ward, Ward, do you hear me? The voice was Commander Nuri's, sharp, focused, accustomed to being obeyed. Elias tapped the comm panel. Nuri's, we hear you. Good, listen carefully. We tracked multiple Merc squads moving toward your position. You need to head for Sector 12, Maintenance Core. It's the only area not on their search grid. Elias frowned. Sector 12, the pressure locks there barely work. Half the systems are offline. It's practically condemned. Exactly. They won't expect you to go somewhere that unstable. Arinya tilted her head. Unstable in which way? Elias cleared his throat. Structurally. Structurally. She blinked at him, as in crumbling. Only in some places. Some... Look, let's not get stuck on definitions. A deafening blast shook the corridor. Dust rained from the ceiling. Arinya grabbed Elias and pulled him down behind a fallen support beam just as another explosion echoed down the hall. Boots. Voices, metal scraping, close, too close. Elias could feel Arinya's breath near his ear, warm, steady, grounding. They are trying to hurt us, she whispered. Push us toward open ground. Then we go down, Elias said. Maintenance shaft. 3 meters behind us. Arinya nodded. The next moment, they dropped through the floor panel into a vertical shaft lined with old cooling conduits and emergency ladders. Elias grabbed the ladder rungs as they slid down into semi-darkness. Arinya followed with inhuman fluidity, descending silently beside him. Halfway down, the panel above them slid open. A mercenary leaned in, weapon raised. Arinya reacted first. She pushed off the ladder, flipping upward in a blur of silver and blue. A flash of violet energy flared from her hand. The mercenary's weapon clattered away, his body slumping. She dropped back to Elias' level like a falling feather. He stared at her. "Remind me," he said breathlessly, "to never upset you." A hint of amusement warmed her eyes. "You would never upset me," she said simply. Elias nearly missed the next ladder rung. They reached the bottom of the shaft, a long maintenance corridor barely lit by failing amber lights. As Elias led them forward, he noticed Arinya studying him with quiet curiosity. "What?" he asked, cheeks warming. "You are unexpectedly calm." He barked a short laugh. "Trust me, inside, full meltdown, outside, doing my best impression of a competent human." "You are more than competent," she said. "You don't know me very well." "I know enough," she replied. There was something about the way she said it, soft, certain, that made Elias' chest go warm in a way he wasn't fully prepared for. But then the corridor lights flickered again. This time not from damage, they shifted into a soft, gold-tinted pulse. Arinya inhaled sharply. "What is it?" Elias asked. "The protocol," she whispered. "It's reacting." Text scrolled across the nearest wall panel. Biosignature coupling. 61%. Neural synchrony, initiated. Emotional harmony, detected. Dawn protocol timestamp, 57 minutes until completion. Elias' eyes widened. "Emotional harmony," he read aloud. "Wow, okay, that's accurate." "Embarrassing, both." Arinya's cheeks glowed faintly, her markings shimmering with soft warmth. "It means," she said quietly, "that the protocol has sensed mutual trust." "Just trust?" Elias asked, her voice dropped, barely a whisper. "For now." Before Elias' brain could fully process that, the calm speaker crackled again. "Ward, this is Nuri's. You have multiple hostiles converging on your location. I estimate 2 minutes. Sector 12 was never meant to hold people. It had been designed decades ago as a temporary structural support extension, a skeletal ring of scaffolding, maintenance gratings, and half-completed reinforcement beams. After budget cuts and endless emergency reallocations, the entire sector had been sealed off and quietly forgotten, which made it the perfect place to hide someone who was never meant to be found. Elias and Arinya burst through the narrow threshold just as the pressure doors whirred open, Commander Nuri's manually overriding the locks from the control center. As soon as they stepped inside, the heavy blast doors slammed shut behind them, sealing with a metallic boom that echoed through the hollow sector. The air smelled like dust, cold steel, and old coolant. Arinya scanned the vast chamber, her violet gaze sweeping over the towering support pillars and suspended platforms. "This place," she murmured, "it feels unfinished." "That's because it is," Elias said. "Half the support systems were never installed, but there's one thing working here that doesn't work anywhere else." Arinya tilted her head, "And that is?" Elias pointed toward the far end of the chamber, where a massive array of glowing conduits traced up the walls like a web of golden roots. "An old emergency atmospheric generator," he said. "One of the first models used on Helion. It runs independently of the main grid, and that's important because—" A distant rumble shook the floor. "They're trying to shut down the station's air systems," Elias finished grimly. "They want to flush us out of hiding." Arinya stepped closer to the generator, her face softening as she watched the pulsing glow. "It is beautiful," she whispered. Elias smiled faintly. "You say that about a lot of dangerous things." She turned, her expression warm. "Beautiful and dangerous are often intertwined." His heart made that inconvenient lurch again. He cleared his throat quickly. "Anyway, this generator keeps the air stable in this sector. As long as we stay here, they can't suffocate us out." Arinya nodded slowly. "Then we have a temporary advantage." "Temporary is the right word," Elias said. "This place is barely holding together. One wrong hit from their boarding teams, and the entire structure could collapse." As if on cue, a violent tremor rattled the scaffolding above them. Dust cascaded from the ceiling in shimmering streaks. Elias instinctively reached for Arinya, steadying her as the floor vibrated dangerously beneath their feet. When the shaking subsided, she didn't step away. Neither did he. Her hand remained on his chest, feeling his heartbeat through the fabric of his uniform. Her breath brushed against his throat, soft and warm. For a moment, the world felt impossibly quiet, like the station itself was holding its breath around them. Then the corridor lights flickered, shifting into a deeper golden hue. Another panel illuminated with pulsing text. Biosignature coupling, 79%. Neural resonance, stable. Emotional cohesion, elevated. Completion threshold, 42 minutes until dawn. Elias stared at the numbers. Okay, he whispered. Why is that climbing so fast? Arinya drew her hand back, though not quickly. Because the protocol senses alignment. Alignment, Elias said. I'm aligned with gravity half the time. That doesn't mean we should be married. It is not gravity it measures. Her voice was soft, almost shy, a tone he had never heard from her before. It measures intention. Oh no, that word landed heavily in his chest. Intention? Elias repeated, hoping she hadn't noticed the warmth creeping across his face. She stepped closer again, not too close, but undeniably closer. Yes. Your intentions toward me, she said, her voice like velvet wrapped around a secret. And mine toward you. Elias opened his mouth to reply, no idea what he planned to say, when a sudden metallic clang reverberated across the chamber. Boots too many to count, Arinya stiffened. They've breached the outer access tunnel. Elias grabbed her arm. We need to move, follow me. They darted across the chamber, weaving between scaffolding columns. Elias led them to a lower platform, almost invisible behind a maze of pipes and cabling. The catwalk here was narrow, barely thicker than a maintenance beam, suspended 4 stories above jagged reinforcement struts. Arinya paused, studying the drop with raised eyebrows. You expect us to cross this? It's not as bad as it looks, Elias said. It looks like death. I mean, okay, yes, but it's sturdy death. Arinya shot him a look, one that said she was questioning every life choice that led her here. But she stepped onto the beam anyway. Elias followed close behind. Halfway across, voices echoed through the chamber. There, heat signatures. Sector 12. Mercenaries poured onto the platform above them, weapons drawn. Elias froze. We're out of time. Arinya didn't hesitate. She placed her hand against the support beam, and a surge of shimmering energy rippled outward in a perfect wave. For an instant, the entire catwalk glowed bright violet, and then it dissolved behind them like mist in sunlight, collapsing into the abyss below and forcing the mercenaries to halt their advance. Elias gaped at the now missing walkway. You disintegrated the whole. It was unstable anyway, she interrupted, not looking back. Keep moving. They reached the far platform just as the remaining walkway buckled. Elias grabbed the railing and pulled himself up. Arinya landed with silent grace beside him. They weren't safe yet. Another set of mercenaries appeared on the upper deck, aiming down at them. Arinya stepped forward, eyes bright. Stay behind me. Elias didn't argue. Energy fire rained down. But every blast struck the shimmering barrier Arinya formed with her hands, a luminous shield that bent light itself around them. The air vibrated with each impact, humming like a living thing. Elias stared awestruck. Arinya, what are you? She didn't look away from the onslaught. I am the last keyholder of the continuum. A blast struck the barrier, she flinched but held firm. And I will not let them take me. Another impact. A crack formed in the shield. Not while you stand beside me. Before Elias could respond, a voice boomed across the chamber through the station's emergency speakers. Ward, Arinya, jump now. Elias recognized the voice instantly. Commander Nuries, Arinya looked at Elias. He looked at her. No words needed. They jumped. The world tilted, metal rushed up to meet them, wind roared past their ears. And instead of hitting steel, they slammed into a powerful magnetic lift field that caught them midair and carried them down to a hidden maintenance platform. Arinya gasped, stunned by the weightlessness. Elias grabbed her hand to steady her. She didn't let go even after they landed. Above them, the mercenaries were shouting, scrambling, firing blindly into the air. But they were too late. Arinya and Elias were already being carried through the narrow maintenance conduit, away from danger. Then the lights in the conduit flickered and another message appeared. Neural synchrony, 93%. Emotional harmony, VRFID. Dawn protocol, nearing completion. Time remaining, 36 minutes. Arinya stared at the display. Her voice trembled. It is happening faster than expected. Yeah, Elias whispered. No kidding. She turned to him, eyes luminous, vulnerable in a way he hadn't seen before. Elias, if we complete this bond, you will not just gain authority. You will gain my burden, all of it. My enemies, my responsibilities, my future. He took a shaky breath, and if we don't complete it. She lowered her gaze. Then the continuum dies with me. Elias swallowed, then we're finishing it. Her head jerked up. There's no other choice, he said softly. The assembly wing of Helion Refuge Station was never meant to experience war. It had been built for diplomatic ceremonies, emergency broadcasts, and interspecies cultural gatherings, for everything civilized, everything hopeful. But as Elias and Arinya stepped out of the maintenance conduit into the vast atrium, the space had transformed into a storm of urgency. Refugees crowded the mezzanines. Engineers rerouted power lines across the marble floor. Security officers barricaded the main entrance with portable shields. Emergency drones zipped overhead like panicked fireflies, and at the center of it all, Commander Nuri stood on a raised platform, issuing orders with the authority of someone who had held entire planets together during crises. She turned the moment she saw them. "Finally," she snapped, "we were ready to drag the two of you here by force." Elias stumbled onto the platform, breathless. "Good to see you too, Commander." Arinya stepped beside him, taller, composed despite everything, a calm center in the whirlwind of chaos. The refugees near the platform murmured when they saw her. Some gasped, some whispered in reverent tones. "She's Arakai." "Is it true? The heir survived. The Dawn Protocol. Is the ceremony happening?" Nuri's held up a hand, quieting the room instantly. "Everyone listen," she said, voice echoing through the chamber. "The mercenaries are breaching the upper decks. We estimate they'll reach this section within 12 minutes. If that happens, we'll be overrun. Our only chance is to activate the Dawn Protocol before they arrive." A hush swept through the hall. Elias swallowed. Arinya stepped forward. Her voice when she spoke was the kind that reached hearts without effort, soft, melodic, yet unbreakably clear. "The Dawn Protocol is not merely a ceremony," she said. "It is a bond of witness, a union of intention. It requires proximity and truth." Elias felt his stomach drop. Truth? He was deeply unprepared for anything involving truth, but Arinya turned to him, her expression serene, luminous, painfully sincere. "Elias Ward," she said, "if you stand with me when artificial dawn arrives, you will share my authority. My burdens, my life. Are you certain?" He stared at her, at the woman whose entire world had been destroyed in a day, at the heiress who carried an entire people's future in her hands, at the refugee who knelt before him in desperation, at the warrior who shielded him with living energy, at the quiet presence who trusted him beyond reason. He exhaled. "I didn't choose this," he said, "but I choose you." The words left his mouth before he could rethink them. Nuri's raised an eyebrow. Refugees murmured. Arinya's violet eyes widened just faintly. And then, a glow shimmered beneath their feet, soft, warm, rising in spiraling arcs of gold and violet. The Dawn Protocol was responding. Text scrolled across every nearby holo display, biosignature coupling. 98%. Neural synchrony, complete. Emotional cohesion, verified. Dawn Protocol, ready for finalization. Time until artificial dawn, 11 minutes. Elias inhaled sharply. "Oh wow, okay, that's fast." Nuri stepped close, lowering her voice. "Listen to me carefully, Ward. Once this completes, you will have the authority to open all Arakai evacuation routes across contested space. You could evacuate entire sectors. Millions of lives. No pressure," Elias muttered. "You have every enemy of the Continuum coming for you," Nuri's continued. "If you complete this, there's no going back." Elias looked at Arinya. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. He nodded once. "We're doing it." Before Nuri's could reply, an explosion ripped through the upper balcony. Refugees screamed. Security shields flared as mercenaries forced their way through the breach. Nuri's shouted an order. "Defensive line now." Arinya grabbed Elias' hand. "It must happen here," she said urgently. "In the open, witnessed." "What do we do?" he asked. She lifted his hand, pressing it gently against the center of her sternum, where her markings pulsed softly like living starlight. "Hold," she whispered. "Stay close, and let the protocol read the truth of us." He swallowed hard, heart hammering. Her forehead brushed his. Her breath mingled with his. The glowing sigils beneath her skin brightened, forming delicate branches of light across her collarbone, up her neck, beneath her jaw. The room dimmed, not from power failure, but because the protocol drew light toward them, forming a shimmering dome of gold and violet that wrapped around their bodies. Refugees stared in awe. Mercenaries hesitated. Even the station seemed to quiet, machinery softening to a distant hum. Arinya's voice was barely a whisper. "Elias." Her fingers curled around his. "Do you accept the bond?" He opened his mouth, but the question hung suspended as mercenaries poured into the chamber, firing wildly at the defensive line. Security shields cracked under the intensity. Nuris shouted something Elias couldn't hear. Arinya drew a shaky breath, eyes still closed. Elias, please say it. Her voice broke, just one word. He squeezed her hands. I accept. The world erupted. Light surged around them, brilliant, blinding, warm as sunrise on living skin. A wave of energy burst outward, throwing the nearest mercenaries off their feet. The dome expanded, filling the hall with radiant heat. On every screen, Dawn Protocol completed. Witness bond activated. Authority transfer. Shared. Evacuation routes unlocked. Arinya exhaled in a rush, a sound halfway between relief and something deeper, something Elias felt rather than heard. Then, from the ceiling, an enormous holomap flickered to life. Every sealed evacuation corridor in the galaxy. Opened, the entire assembly wing gasped as one. Nuris stared at the display, stunned. You just gave us access to the entire refugee network. Arinya turned toward Elias, eyes glowing, soft, impossibly grateful. You didn't just save me, she whispered. You saved my people. Elias smiled shakily. Yeah, well, I wasn't gonna let you handle this alone. They stood still holding hands, while chaos surged outside the dome of light. And then, the dome flickered, the light sputtered. Arinya's expression snapped from relief to alarm. No, she whispered. No, something's wrong. The room trembled violently. Elias looked around desperately. What's happening? Arinya's markings dimmed. Her knees buckled. Elias caught her just as she collapsed against him, her head falling onto his shoulder. Her voice was faint, barely audible. The protocol, it linked us. A shudder went through her, but something else linked with us too. His blood ran cold. What does that mean? Her eyelashes fluttered weakly. It means... She swallowed hard. It means we're not alone in this bond. The lights above them flickered again, this time violently, as if something vast and unseen had latched onto the Dawn Protocol's energy. Darkness swallowed the assembly wing, not the kind caused by power loss, but a deeper, thicker, almost physical darkness that pressed against the skin like cold fingers. Elias tightened his arms around Arinya, feeling her tremble as the last traces of the Dawn Protocol's glow faded from her skin. Emergency lanterns flickered on for half a second, and then died. Whispers rose in the blackness. Refugees clung to each other. Security teams shouted orders they couldn't see to execute. Nuris's voice cut through the void. Stay calm. Hold positions. Her words were drowned out by a low, resonating hum. A hum that wasn't mechanical. A hum that felt alive. Arinya stirred weakly in Elias' arms, her breath warm against his neck. They found us, she whispered. The one who stole our energy. They've entered the station. Elias swallowed. His throat felt tight. His fingers trembled against her back. Who? He breathed. Who did this to your people? Arinya lifted her head slightly, her glowing violet eyes like two stars trapped in the dark. Not a mercenary, not a war broker. A shiver ran through her. A defector. Elias froze. A what? An Arakai, she whispered. One of my mother's inner circle. His blood went cold. They wanted power over the evacuation networks, she continued, eyes unfocused. They wanted complete control. They killed the council, and now they want us. A new sound echoed across the hall. Slow, deliberate footsteps on metal. Soft, measured, unhurried. Whoever it was wasn't afraid of them. A faint glow appeared at the far end of the hall. A pale blue sigil forming in midair, swirling slowly like smoke made of light. And then a figure emerged beneath it. Tall, Arakai, markings carved into their skin like cracked ice. Eyes glowing an unnatural white, they spoke in a voice that reverberated through bone. Arinya Sael, last daughter of a dead order. Elias pulled her closer instinctively. The figure smiled. And the human who completed the protocol, unexpected but useful. Nuri stepped forward in the dark, weapon raised. Take one more step and I'll... With a flick of their hand, she was thrown across the hall by an invisible force, slamming into a pillar hard enough to crack the stone. Nery? Elias tried to shout, but Arinya gripped his arm. Don't, she whispered. Their power is magnified by the protocol. They're feeding on it. The figure stepped closer, hands clasped behind their back in effortless arrogance. You've made this much easier, they said. Now the bond is complete, and both of your signatures grant access to every sealed corridor in the galaxy. Elias felt Arinya tense, anger, grief, and fear twisting together inside her. You murdered them, she said softly. Every elder. Every guardian, my mother. Progress requires sacrifice, the figure replied coldly. Your lineage stood in the way of a new galactic order. And what order is that? Elias demanded. One where you control who lives and dies. The figure tilted their head. Precisely. A blade of pale energy formed in their hand. Arinya straightened slowly in Elias' arms, pushing herself upright. No, she said. The figure paused. What was that? Arinya stepped forward, swaying, but her voice sharpened like steel. I said no. Her markings ignited, weak at first, flickering like dying embers. But Elias felt her hand slide into his, and something inside him answered. A warmth spread through his chest, radiating outward. Meeting her glow, strengthening it, amplifying it, the dawn protocol flared between them. A bond awakening in ways the hijacker hadn't anticipated. Arinya gasped softly. What are you doing? Elias gave her hand a gentle squeeze, sharing. The glow expanded, the figure snarled. Impossible, only an Arakai can channel the protocol. Elias shook his head. Maybe before, but you connected us. Light erupted around them, gold for Elias, violet for Arinya, spiraling into a single column that burst upward like a sunrise forced into being. The hijacker staggered backward. What no? This power is mine. Arinya stepped forward. Her voice was calm, not anymore. The bond flared, and Elias felt something like a heartbeat that wasn't his own. He felt Arinya's grief, her strength, her love for her people, her determination to not let them die. And beneath it all, her trust in him, absolute trust. The merging light surged forward in a brilliant wave, striking the hijacker head-on. Their scream echoed through the hall, raw, inhuman, as the protocol ripped its stolen energy away, collapsing their markings and extinguishing their false power. A final shockwave burst outward, hurling the figure into the far wall where they crumpled and lay still. Silence. Then, the emergency lights flickered back on, bathing the assembly wing in stark white. Refugees blinked at the sudden brightness. Security officers steadied themselves. Nuris groaned and pushed herself up from the floor. Elias swayed, lightheaded. But Arinya caught him, her arms wrapping around him gently. You saved me, she whispered. He gave a shaky laugh. Pretty sure we saved each other. She rested her forehead against his. We completed the bond. Yeah, he breathed, kind of hard to miss. Above them, the holo display updated. Evacuation network active. Galactic broadcast sent. War profiteering networks flagged. Arakai succession, recognized. Consort Ward, VRF'd. Nuris limped toward them. Well, she muttered, looks like you two are officially the most important couple in the galaxy. Elias groaned, please don't call us a couple. Arinya's smile warmed softly against his cheek. But we are, she murmured. He choked on air. I mean technically. She slid her fingers through his. It means, she said quietly, I do not have to face what comes next alone. The station lights softened into dawn mode. The scheduled artificial sunrise, glowing through the transparent ceiling panels. The bond pulsed once more, gentle, warm, alive. Elias whispered, so,